Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Cooper. I'm the president and CEO of the Saskatchewan Construction Association. Welcome to the second virtual town hall of the COVID-19 task force. That is the group of experts that have been assembled to help provide answers to questions that construction companies are facing in the COVID-19 era. Today's task force meeting focuses specifically on what we call the employer side issues, so HR, employment law, safety, mental health, communications, and those types of issues. Okay, with that, enough from me. Let's get into the conversation. Again, we'll be monitoring for your questions, so you can put them in at any time. I'm first going to give a couple of minutes to each of our panelists to introduce themselves and to talk about what is new in their world and in their area of expertise in the last week, because the world is changing very rapidly and there's new developments almost every day, and certainly since the last time we were all together. So I'm going to start with Candice. Candice, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world that's new?
Great, thanks Mark. Good morning everyone. My name is Candice Grant. I'm a partner at Robertson Stromberg, which is a law firm based here in Saskatoon. My work centers largely around employment law, so it's been a busy couple of weeks, as I'm sure it has for everyone who's listening and participating today. This goes back, I guess, a little bit more than a week, but the first big change that we've seen in employment law was the introduction of the public health emergency leave, which is primarily for those employees who are in isolation or quarantine, or who have had childcare issues as a result of the closure of the schools or the daycares. So that's been a big shift over the last couple of weeks. The other more recent development is this introduction of a layoff or a temporary layoff for employees of up to 12 weeks in a 16-week period that doesn't trigger the same notice requirements that we've seen typically for layoffs in Saskatchewan. So I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more detail about how those apply, but that's kind of where we're seeing the majority of the questions on this end.
Thanks, Candice. Rodelle.
Morning, everyone. Rodelle Genoway with Untapped Potential Business Consulting. I'm a third-party consultant specializing in HR consulting. So there continues to be two main areas of focus still around layoffs and employment insurance and just how that all works. As far as changes in the past week, I've seen three. The Canada Emergency Response Benefit was introduced, so that replaced two previously announced benefits, the Emergency Care Benefit and the Emergency Support Benefit. So all of those are lumped into one now. Also, the Work-Share program was extended to 76 weeks as a maximum now. And there's been a wage subsidy introduced. There's not a lot of information on that yet. I think Amanda has found some as well, though, so she'll be able to speak on that. But those have been the three changes I've noticed in the past week. I think reality has been starting to set in with a lot of companies, and they're really thinking about, like, what am I going to do? Or they're trying to plan what they're going to do. So whether layoffs have started or continuing to think about that. So a common question I've been getting is, like, what do I got to do if I just want to reduce somebody's hours, say to like 60%, if I'm not actually laying them off? So we can touch on that later. So that's what's been going on in my world, I guess.
Thanks, Rodelle. Kyle.
Thanks, Mark. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Kyle Anderson. I'm with Bridges Health here in Saskatoon. And for those of you that don't know who we are, we assist organizations with a variety of health and wellness services to assist in improving rates of absenteeism and presenteeism in the workplace. So typically kind of at this time of year, we'd be focused more so on physical wellness, right? With the busy construction seasons approaching, helping out with injury prevention, recovery, WCB claim management, things of that nature. But with everything that's going on, we're kind of focused more so on the mental health side of things a lot of the time right now. So, of course, people know that we're feeling stressed, anxious, scared, depressed, all of these different emotions that are completely valid right now. And with things that are, changing so quickly, it seems like all that we're talking about is this COVID stuff. So it's really kind of hard to escape it. So, you know, not a ton has changed since last week, just that continuing feelings of uncertainty, fear, and we just want to do what we can to take a proactive approach and make sure we're looking after our mental health and well-being right now. So from the Bridges side of things, we have a couple areas that we can help out with. We offer our mental health workshops via webinar now, so people can still access them via remote locations and things like that. And we also have a wellness app called Avail, and we open that up so it's just free for anyone to download, available in the App Store or the like Google Store, whatever the name is there. But it's called Avail. It assists people with doing, you know, tracking their mental health, accessing resources and tips, and then connecting with care professionals as well. So again, just a couple of things to encourage people to take a real proactive approach to their mental health.
Well, Kyle, we just had our first question about how is that app spelled. So if you want to just provide some more information on that, and I assume that that's available for everybody to access. Is that correct? Yep,
it is. I just typed it out, but it's AVAIL. So hopefully people can see that.
Yeah, and if you send that, we'll make sure that the information gets out as well. So thanks.
Perfect.
Okay, let's hear next from Amanda. Amanda.
Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Thick. I'm the Director of Operations for the Saskatchewan Construction Association. For the most part, over the last week, a lot of my work has been focused around providing answers to both our members and people outside our membership on what kind of financial supports or business supports might be out there for everybody, and trying to put that in a condensed version so that it's easy to understand, and working with our team to do so. As Rodelle mentions, a little later in this call, I'll talk a little bit more about the wage subsidy piece, because there is some new information out this morning about that. But overall, that's what I've been working on.
Thank you, Amanda. We have Thomas and Loy from the SCA group, and I think Thomas is going to give introductory remarks. Thomas?
Sure, I'll do the opening, and then I'll introduce Loy too. So yeah, basically, we are the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, as probably a lot of you already know. And we, of course, provide the health and safety information to the construction industry. I guess for us, mainly right now, even though we're all, just want to make it clear, even though we're all pretty much in the organization working remotely, we are still operating. We have, you know, sort of suspended some in-class training, but we have lots of online opportunities available. The auditing has been suspended, but I'll talk about that in a second, because one of the things we do want to make sure that we're doing, and some of the questions that we've been fielding lately are around the things such as, you know, business continuity. So I know, although this isn't our daily whack, I know there's lots of questions that kind of come around about contract management in this crisis, which there's many experts who can talk about that on this panel. But in relation to that, you know, people are still saying, well, if my core expires, or my C-core expires, or even my course expires, you know, and I can't renew it, what are you guys doing about it? So I just want to ensure that everybody understands that we are, of course, going to extend those. So your core is not going to expire at this time. If it's coming up due and you can't get your audit done, no one's getting penalized for that. So we are extending those. Same with your courses too. And we are tracking those, and we'll touch base with folks as time goes on and as we manage through this. The other piece we're getting a lot of, I guess, discussion on and sort of questions around are things like, how do we manage on site? I mean, construction is unique. Construction is collaborative in its effort, in its entirety, I suppose, in building anything. But you know, our sites are typically controlled. They're not necessarily open to the public. So there are ways we can mitigate some risks onto that. And we can talk a little bit about that later. And Loy is our health and safety subject matter expert, and she's our advisory services manager. So her and her team are still going to be available, and are quite available, and reaching out to members to make sure that we can address and help people if they need to. So in terms of things like on-site hygiene, social distancing, and that sort of thing, we do have a lot of resources available for folks on our website, as well as through our advisory services. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands that you know, the SCSA hasn't closed its doors. It is locked right now, sorry, but you can still get a hold of us. There's a couple of us in the office, but you can still reach people if you need to get that information, and we are here for you if you need to be. And I do want to thank SCA too for partnering in this. And again, because we are a collaborative industry, I think everyone working together to sort of bring this information is vitally important. So thanks to SCA and all of the rest of the panelists as well too. So quickly, I'll introduce Loy, and she wants to say a couple words, she can. But so Loy, like I said, is our advisory services manager, and she manages our team of highly successful advisors that can help you in any questions you have in regards to construction, health, and safety. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you, Thomas. I'll just take one very brief moment. I'm Loy Levesque. Thomas already told you my job title, so we're good. I think the one change that's come up throughout the last week is construction being deemed an allowable business. So with that happening, we've had a lot of questions about how to keep people safe on site while work continues. So lots of information, lots of resources to share, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on.
Thanks, Lloyd. Last but not least, I'll ask Brita to say a couple of words, Brita, and introduce yourself and let us know what's emerging for you in the last week.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, everyone. My name is Brita Lind. I'm the CEO of Arcas Advertising. It's a Regina-based marketing, communication, and strategy firm. So some of the questions that we've been getting and some of the themes that we've been following, I'm still banging the drum of, I'm going to tell you 4 things to remember today. Get to the point quickly in your communications, bottom line up front. Your communications and your conduct during this time affects your brand, and your reputation is your brand. So that's how that works together. Connect with people in a real way. And we're also starting to talk with companies about, we're calling it flip the switch. How do you flip the switch when we're through all of this, because we will get through all of this, and what is start strategizing for the future. So just to unpack those, get to the point quickly. Are you being briefed to the point? If I see one more long-winded email from a company telling me about all the things they're doing about COVID-19 that is like 5 paragraphs long, I think my head's going to pop off. And everyone's feeling that way, so keep it short. So we call it bottom line up front, but the most important information right at the top, because when people are stressed, they can't remember as much. So if there's one thing they remember, make it sure it's at 2 or 3 sentences at the top. Secondly, how you conduct yourself right now is your reputation, and your reputation is your brand. So communicate well with your customers, get ahead of things. If something's happening that your clients, your employees need to know about, be prompt, be honest, get it out there. I know someone, they were let go, they had no idea that anything like that was going to happen. Had the company been talking with their employees about what's going on and been honest, it wouldn't have been such a blow. And this person is really bitter about this company, and they're bad talking about it all over the place. But had they been told what was going on, that never would have happened. The other thing is, it's better to play offense rather than defense. Get information out there ahead of time, even if it's imperfect, but get it out. The other thing is connect with people in a real way. Get information out, pick up the phone, call them. If you have a lot of employees, it's okay to do that 1-minute video. Get things out in social media, short emails, or if you have the ability to text all of your employees, meet them where they're at, where they like to communicate. And then the last thing is, we call it be ready for flipping the switch. Start working on plans on when we're coming out of this. What's your communication strategy when you come out of this? What are you going to say? How are you going to get more back into sales cycle and networking and things like that? And are you going to be ready? It's harder to start an engine that's been sitting in the garage than an engine that has all the spark plugs all cleaned and ready to go and ready to fire up. So that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're telling people.
Awesome. Thank you, Brita. And there were lots of a couple of remarks in the comments phase when you talked about fewer emails that was very popular. So thanks for that. Okay, so let's dive right into the questions that we've been getting from participants. I have one here from Jeff from Balzers, who asked, if you reduce hours for your staff, then have to lay them off, will this affect the amount of EI they can claim? And Rodelle, why don't we start with you on that one?
Sure, thanks, Mark. Yeah, if you reduce hours for staff and then have to lay them off, I don't think it should affect EI payments, because EI looks at your 21 weeks, I believe, within a 52-week period, and it picks the best of those 21 weeks. So there shouldn't be any issues with losing out on the maximum payments or whatever that maximum would be eligible for that person.
Okay, thanks, Rodelle. Do any of our other panelists have anything they want to add to that? No? Okay. So Jeff, hopefully that answers your question. I think that's pretty straightforward. Next question, Amanda, we'll start with you, is from Kendra from Ardell Steel, who asked, can you provide any more details on the wage subsidies that were announced on Friday?
Yes, actually this morning we got a little bit more information from the federal government on what these will look like. So the details are pretty slim right now, but I can at least provide a little bit more information as to how this might look for businesses. So the wage subsidy seems to be able to apply to any size of business, whether you're small or large, nonprofits as well as charities. And it says that the way that the eligibility is going to work for this new one is actually going to be based on a decrease of your overall revenue. So in order to be eligible, employers are going to have to show that their revenues have decreased by at least 30% or more to be eligible to claim this wage subsidy. Now, how they're going to calculate that, or how we show that, that information isn't available quite yet, and we're hoping to see that hopefully later today or early tomorrow. But right now, that's how they've worded it. As for the subsidy itself, it's calculated on the first $58,000 of an employee's wage, which is about $847 a week is where it'll cap out. And my assumption is that you should be able to claim that across your whole workforce. But once again, the details are limited right now. And this will backdate to March 15th, 2020. So as the details come out, I'm assuming they will provide information on how we'll be able to go back to payrolls that have been filed for those periods. And this is kind of just an important part that they did mention. They wanted to ensure that if you are using this benefit, it's something that you need to use. And like, if you can't afford to be paying your employees today, they don't want you to be filing for this. But they've just asked that if you do have people on layoff right now, to consider rehiring them under this program instead of having them on EI. So those are some of the details we've seen, and we'll be providing more as we hear about what's coming out on this.
And that information would be shared out in our bulletins and on the website?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Rodelle, anything that you'd like to add to that based on what you know about the program today?
No, Amanda topped it off well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next question, and I'm just going to ask the panelists who wants to answer this to self-identify, because I'm not sure who the best person should be, but the question comes from Edward from Innovation Renovations. How should we manage medical or dental plans as employees are self-isolating? Does anybody have any insights on that one?
I can take a stab at it.
Sure, go ahead, Rodelle.
So I think firstly, it would depend on what your benefits plan has for criteria to be eligible for it. So if there's a break in employment or anything like that, I think every benefits plan is can be a little specific in that area. But firstly, I would think that it also depends on how the person is being paid during that 2-week period that they're isolating. So are they being paid sick time? Are they taking vacation time? Is it an unpaid leave? And in that case, I think if it's an unpaid leave, then the question is, do they still get to receive their benefits? And again, that would depend on what the eligibility criteria is within the benefits period. Just an example, like when someone goes on a longer leave, like on maternity leave, for example, they're still eligible for benefits, and the employer typically will just get like post-dated checks or be able to get money from that person to pay their half of the premium. But I think with someone self-isolating for just 2 weeks, you should still have money available with their payroll to claw out their portion of the benefits.
Okay, thanks, Rodelle. Does anybody have anything to add to that?
I can add to that just briefly. I think Rodelle's nailed it in terms of saying the first thing you need to ask is what your plan provides for and whether they're eligible to maintain that coverage. As far as legal obligations go, the Saskatchewan Employment Act says that someone who's on an employment leave under that act is entitled to maintain their benefits as long as they pay the premiums. So what we're getting are a lot of questions from employers asking whether they need to maintain that coverage. The answer is generally if they're on this sort of public health emergency leave where they are isolating, then you are obliged to give them the option to continue. That is not the case with layoffs, which are different. Again, we're encouraging people to try to keep that coverage in place just as a way to keep up morale and be there for your employees. But there doesn't seem to be a legal obligation to maintain the coverage if we're talking layoff.
Okay, thank you. So Edward, hopefully that answers the question that you had. I'm going to stay with you, Candice, and ask this question from Arlene from Capital Petroleum. To lay off due to shortage of work during COVID-19, am I still required to give notice or pay in lieu of notice as per Saskatchewan standards?
Yeah, and that's the question that we're receiving the most often, as I'm sure will be no surprise to anyone. The current answer to that is no. If you are laying off your employees for a maximum of 12 weeks in a rolling 16-week period, you are not required to give notice or pay in lieu of notice.
Okay, thank you. I think Rodelle, this next one would be for you, although again, anybody who would like to answer after Rodelle is welcome to do so. This comes from Allison from Klein's Cabling and Electric, who asks, do we need to issue an ROE for an employee to be able to access CERB, so CERB, if the work is intermittent and they are not receiving full-time hours?
I believe so, that you would still have to issue an ROE. I think applications can be made for that starting April 6th. So I think once that time period comes around, things will start to get a little more clear on what the requirements are.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the expectation is still that employers have to file ROEs if people are leaving the job to access some of these. Is that your understanding as well, Candice? And Rodelle, yeah. So go ahead, Candice first.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well.
Good. Okay, and okay, so hopefully that answers your question, Arlene. We got a couple of questions here that have come in. So we'll take one of them first here from Jared Hillman for Brita. So Brita, the question is, what's the best way to continue to market, network, and advertise your business without seeming to be insensitive to the present situation?
Okay, thanks, Jared. We actually have gotten this question and we are dealing with clients on this question a fair bit. It does run the gamut of still being honest, real, and also people know that as a business and a company that you are out there working, that you're trying to keep your employees employed and you're trying to help and serve customers. I think there's a lot of things covered on social media all about what's going on as businesses. I'm not sure if we need to do too much of that. I think it's okay sometimes to focus on our products and services. Now, if it's a service that's completely irrelevant right now, you can't sell hair care right now, but you might be able to sell hair care in a month saying, hey, we all know that you got bad haircuts right now and we'll be ready when this is all over, right? And I think the public will be understanding. There's a really great article, I'll see if I can find it, and it was about, hey, marketers, it's okay to market your products. And it's okay to do it in a real way. The car manufacturers, I can't remember which one, I think it's Honda, has already switched some of their advertising to mentioning COVID-19 financing, to actually say that in their spot. And they're putting it out there and saying, but still doing their product. And I think it's okay. I think running it by people to make sure that you're not being insensitive is a way to go. But if it's relevant, it's fun. There's also Jack, the whiskey manufacturer, the alcohol spirits manufacturer, has just done a great spot of how people are staying connected in this time of social distancing, and like raising their glasses to the screen and stuff like that. And it's a hopeful message at the end saying, you know, stay safe, and it's signed Jack, right? SaskTel has switched their, I don't know if you can see it in your upper left-hand corner of your phones. It doesn't say SaskTel anymore. It says stay safe, which is a brilliant move on their.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a brilliant maneuver. So it's like, use your channels, talk to your people, listen to your clients, get on the phone, ask what they need. And then as far as marketing, it's okay to say things. It's okay to be real. It's okay to try things. I think it's a new time. It's a completely new frontier right now. I hope that answers your question, Jared. It's a great one.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Brita. Next question, we're going to go to Kyle. Kyle, we're hearing from a lot of companies that employee fear is understandably causing disruptions, both in terms of productivity and people not feeling safe at work, even if they might actually be safe. What advice would you give companies in terms of how they can support employees as they're managing that, so that they can, you know, continue to be safe and productive as best as possible?
I think that's a great question. From what we're seeing, a lot of that fear comes from kind of the mixed messaging that we're receiving, and also kind of picking up on things that people say just on social media or in person that really don't have an understanding of what's going on. I think I would just kind of refer them back to checking the facts, the information that we're getting from those credible organizations like the World Health Organization, from you know, Sask Health, and not just, you know, so-and-so on Twitter that said, you know, spritz some essential oils on your face twice a day and you'll be okay, right? So really kind of getting back to the basis of what's going on, checking the facts, and I think that can really go a long way in terms of addressing that fear. But at the same time, that fear is a valid concern. Validating those people's experiences and encouraging them to and offering the support whatever they need at that time.
Thanks, Kyle. Next question, we're going to go to Thomas and or Loy. So this is a question that came in from an attendee, and so I'm going to note that we're answering it live here. The question is around using contractors coming from outside of the province, and whether or not that creates some challenges, and whether, I don't know if it's high. The question is it higher risk or not, and how should sites and general contractors be managing these trades differently? I'm going to try to avoid having you step into the landmine of whether people should use out of province contractors. I guess the question is, if people are traveling across provincial borders during something like this, what's your advice about how to manage that safely?
Go ahead, Lloyd.
I had a feeling that would come my way. Is it higher risk? I can't really say that. There is nothing to say travel between the provinces at this time is not allowed or recommended. And the Saskatchewan government is paying attention to this and will put controls in place if that's deemed to be an issue. All employers should be doing a wellness check on their employees before they come to the workplace. So asking those same questions that are asked in the online health assessment can really help to determine if workers are safe to be on site or not. And that doesn't really matter where they're from, if they came from Calgary or if they're local to Saskatoon. I think chances of infection at this point are similar between the provinces. So really important to stop and do that wellness check before people come on site. And that's how you're going to mitigate having exposure risks at work.
And that's regardless of where the people come from within Canada, is what you're saying? The procedures.
I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Lloyd. We've got a question that came in from Jennifer Owery. And I think Candice, I'll come to you on this one to start. So I'm just going to read it out. Our employees have a temporary layoff as of last week. many were and are fearful when we come back to business, and they're still fearful of returning to work. And so I think she's implying if they refuse to come back to work, would their layoff then become a leave of absence or quit? And she said, personal protective equipment, communication, et cetera, may not diffuse the fear, just looking for input.
Sure, and I expect this is going to be an issue experienced by many employers as we start to transition back into business as usual or business as we've done it previously. And I'll maybe, once I've finished my comments, throw it over to others on this call who might have some suggestions about how to deal with those fears and what measures might be appropriate for the employer to try to address that circumstance before it gets to the point of deciding whether someone's on a leave of absence or quit. Employers in Saskatchewan have an obligation to take measures to reasonably ensure the safety of their employees while they're at work. And so an employee who's refusing to come back to work could take the position that they haven't been protected and that the employer needs to take further measures to ensure their safety. And anytime an employee raises that kind of concern, it's obviously something that you're going to take seriously as an employer, that you're going to look into what measures have we taken, what measures could we take, how do we address these concerns? And keeping a dialogue open with your employees is a huge component of that, understanding what their concerns are and taking a hard look at whether there's something you can reasonably put into place to address that so you don't get to the point where they're just refusing to come into work. If there's, if you get to that standstill point, that standoff where you've said we've done everything we reasonably can, we think this is a reasonably safe workplace for you to come to, the employee can absolutely at that point say I'm refusing to come to work for occupational health and safety reasons, which does trigger that obligation to investigate. As a general rule, we're recommending at this point that employers take a very flexible approach on those to avoid making any rash decisions about the future of that person being with you. It would be appropriate to extend a leave at that point to allow you to conduct a full investigation, to have the province conduct an investigation if that's what it comes to, and to make an assessment at that point. Ultimately, if you have taken the appropriate measures and your investigation confirms that, if the person simply refuses to come back to work, you likely will be saying ultimately this person has abandoned their job.
Thank you, Candice. Is there any of the other panelists that would like to add something to that from your perspective? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands or anybody coming off mute. So Candice, you got it, you nailed it all. Well done, thanks. And the feedback on the messages, that was a great answer. For those who haven't noticed, Brita did post in the chat the link to the marketing article she was referring to, so you can access that there, and we'll make sure to flag that and send that out later as well. Okay. The next question, I think Rodelle, you'd be the best person to answer this to start, was asking for more information about the work sharing program. And I understand that last week the feds have started making some changes to that program to make it easier to access, but I don't know any of the details on that. I don't know if you do either, but wondering if we can start with you, Rodelle, to provide some details on the work sharing program and how it may be applicable. And then Amanda or Candice, I don't know, you might have some additional thoughts to add, but Rodelle?
Sure, I'll take a stab at it, but I'm definitely not well versed in this program. I think I've been lucky enough my career that I haven't had to deal with it yet. So there is a pretty good summary though that the government has put together, and I can attach the link in the chat box too, but just in a nutshell, so the work sharing program, you have to show that there's been a decrease of at least 10% in your, not just revenue, but just showing out of like productivity and just the whole work available has decreased by 10%. And you have to show that employees would be eligible for employment insurance, and that the people who are within this work share program, they have to be permanent employees. It could be part-time or full-time, but they have to be permanent and have to be working year-round, show that it's been a year-round business for at least a few years. I don't know specifics on like amounts that the employees receive, but I think the gist of it is that hours are reduced for that core group of staff, and whether you call it employment insurance or the work share program, those employees are subsidized for the hours that they're not worked, or a portion thereof anyway. So that's in a really big nutshell how I can best explain it anyway.
Thanks, Rodelle. Candice or Amanda, any more you want to add to that?
I think Rodelle's got it quite correct that it looks like a bit of, it's a hugely complicated program that not many of us have experience with. Anybody who's looking at that as an option would be well advised to seek out some advice specific to their situation.
Yeah, I do know we have some resources either now available on the SCA website from like NNP, who's another one of our task force experts. I don't know if it's on the website yet or it will be today, but some information on the program from their perspective. I also know that there's only like 100 employers in all of Saskatchewan that have accessed this program. I was just talking to the Deputy Minister of Immigration and Career Training this morning, and he said it's a great program, but it's a nightmare to administer. And so he did indicate that he believes the government is trying to sort that out and to make it much simpler to access. So I think that's one of those things that stay tuned. We'll see what changes on that front in the coming days, because everybody is sorting through these things as best as they can. I think next question I'm going to come to Loy and or Thomas. There are certain circumstances on our job site where social distancing isn't possible. When these circumstances arise, what guidance should we be providing to our employees? Oh, Loy, you're on mute. Go ahead.
Sorry. That is a very good question. As much as we would like to socially distance at all times, it's not always possible on site. So I would recommend having a thorough look at the job task specifically, resequencing it if necessary to really minimize the amount of time that workers need to be working closer than that 6-foot barrier to each other. Communication, absolutely key with these employees. So making sure they are aware if they need to cough or sneeze, as an example. It is cold and flu season, allergy season as well. So that can happen if they need to do that while working in close proximity to each other. They should walk away, cough, sneeze, do what they have to do, sanitize their hands before coming back to work with that person. Definitely personal protective equipment is recommended in these circumstances. Safety glasses, shields, disposable non-latex gloves, face masks or respirators if they're available. All of those things can really help to minimize the risk if the other person was infected and you have to work closely to them. Make sure that there are hand washing or sanitizing stations right near where that work is going to take place. So as soon as you finish the task and you can move away from each other, thoroughly wash and sanitize your hands and continue on from there. We are currently putting together a bit of a toolbox talk on this subject, and I hope to have that up later today. But in a nutshell, that would be my recommendation.
Fantastic, thanks, Loy. Thomas, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, actually, Lloyd and I were talking about this morning too, and actually Lloyd brought up some really good points on, so I'm going to give her the full credit on this. But, you know, we are looking at we are working with organizations to see if there's hand sanitizer available. We can help, you know, point industry too. But, you know, as they say, the health and safety experts are saying that soap and water actually works just as well. So, you know, water is readily available and so is soap. So you can actually take those out to sites in different jugs and different methods, and you can use, again, spray bottles to disinfect. All the handles that are related to it. So any tool that you do use, you can still wipe down and use and disinfect. But hygiene through this whole thing is probably the most important way of helping to control, as well as the social distancing. And I know that's been a lot of questions we've been getting is, well, how do we sanitize? How do we address proper hygiene on sites? So, you know, in our discussion this morning, Lloyd pointed out to me directly, well, soap is available, water's available, and you can cart that anywhere you want. So I just want to make sure that that's pretty clear. And because we focus on the hand sanitizer and all these things that we need to go to the store to buy, but reality is we probably have a lot of that, and we can just take it to site with us and ensure that people are doing that. So that's my only real comment on it.
Thanks, Thomas. Next question is going to come to you, Kyle, from one of our attendees. So we'll ask you to answer this first, Kyle. Any advice for business owners or managers that are on the verge of burnout and risk not having any energy left when the time comes to ramp back up?
Absolutely, and I think that's definitely a concern that a lot of people are going to be facing right now, because so much of our time and our efforts are faced on just kind of keeping afloat at this time. But you're absolutely right that, you know, once we come out of this, it's going to be a busy time again, trying to ramp up back up and get things back to normal. So a couple things to really keep in mind. We want to make sure we're practicing those self-care techniques, right? Making sure we're getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, taking that time for ourselves. And that's going to look different for absolutely everybody, right? For some people, it's going to be, I need to just kind of shut down and watch a movie and take some time for myself. Maybe that's going to be connecting with family members or friends, whether that's over, you know, video chat or phone, whatever the case is. If you can, take some time to recharge throughout the day so that you're not just working all the way through and then just feeling completely exhausted at the end of the day. Even just those 5-10 minute breaks every couple of hours to maybe go for a walk around your house, try and get outside, get some fresh air. All of those things can really help. And then last, if you're able to kind of set some of those time boundaries for when you are, you know, at this time I'm going to be focused on work, and then I'm going to be leaving that at the office or at, you know, this area of my house, and I'm going to be focused on myself now. Really trying to maintain some of those boundaries is incredibly important. I know it's really easy to just kind of get caught up in, all right, this is my work time, and then I'm going to grab a bite to eat and keep working through the evening. Or even if I'm watching TV, going to be really focused and my mind is still on work related things. Really trying to set those boundaries for ourselves, I think, could be important as well. And then if you do need to reach out for professional assistance, I can include some links and resources there as well.
Thanks, Kyle. And I guess the bottom line is that people don't prioritize that and take care of themselves, and they're not going to be able to take care of their teams and their business, right?
Exactly. Even if you're working hard and you're surviving at this point, but you're all maxed out, once we get out on the other side of this, there's not going to be anything left to keep going with. So, you know, really trying to make sure we're maintaining our mental wellness throughout this time.
Thanks, Kyle. Anybody want to add anything to that?
I will.
You were the next one I was going to come to anyway, so go ahead, Brita.
Okay, good. I have encountered this in my company as well, because I'm the CEO and the buck stops here, right? So in the very first week where I just switched from a CEO to suddenly becoming a homeschooler and a CEO, it was actually I said to my company, reach out when you need help, talk to each other, and let's, you know, communicate. And the first person that was most adversely affected was me. And the 4 most powerful words we can say as a leader is, I need your help. So that's what I did. I reached out to my team and I said, I need your help. I'm the first one that's struggling here. And we set up daily calls at 1:30 that were connection calls when we went through celebrations and challenges. And I let myself be vulnerable and human. And that allowed my staff to then be vulnerable and human and to be able to admit when they're having a hard time. And so I got through that, and then someone else had a challenge after that, but it became really safe to have a challenge, because that's one of the hardest things as leaders. We think we have to be that buffalo that's like charging out ahead, and that's not true. We are human, and the more human we appear to our people, the easier it is for them to be human. So that's been my experience. I know, Kyle, you're the expert, but that's how I handled it.
So take on, or be vulnerable, be human, and take care of yourself. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Brita. So Brita, I do have a question for you then. I just want to note, by the way, that Rodelle has posted the information on the work sharing program and other federal supports in the chat. So Brita, this question came from Jason Duke from CertaPro, who said, how do we communicate with clients to help them understand that we can operate safely and what we're doing to do that in a time when everybody is anxious and fearful, and they're wondering whether we can operate safely in their homes or in their places of business? What can we do to communicate that more effectively, that yes, we can do that?
Okay, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jason. So this is a reassurance strategy, which often is a high touch strategy too. What's important is to give them high level details that are reassuring to them, but also reassuring in a way that they can also tell the people that they work with, because they might be getting other people, your clients might be getting other people at their company saying, oh, what if they're not social distancing? What if this happens? What's happening? Or how, they're afraid and they don't know what to say. So you have to tell them what to say. So keep it high level. I would say things like, to me, the construction industry has always been about safety. You have always conducted yourself because mistakes like cost lives. So that's that's critical. This is not new to the construction industry. To me, mission zero includes COVID-19. So that messaging. Also, so maybe sharing some things that you are doing to address that can help that person. Say, here are the changes, here are the additions we've made. Maybe it's the sanitizers that we're talking about, the tasks that are, how people are staying 6 feet away, all those sorts of things. Keep it short. Like I've said before, don't send your entire policy out there. Just give them the relevant bite-sized information that you can give them. Also, if you're telling people that you're safe and you're telling people that you're doing it, you better damn well be doing it. So you got to be prepared, because if you're not doing it, you're going to be in big trouble, because just one photograph on social media or one call or something like that can really blow up in your face. So now, doesn't mean mistakes don't happen. So if something happens and you put all the precautions in place, get on the phone and call your customer. Get ahead of it and say, hey, this thing happened. We had everything in place, but here's what we've done. We've taken ownership of this, and here's the solution we put in place to fix it so it never happens again. And that's what clients need to hear. They don't want to hear a problem from someone else. I would say those are the biggest pieces. I know also on a media front, construction, companies, you might get phone calls from the media. I would say you do not have to talk to the media if you don't want to. I would refer the media to the SCA, and you don't have to answer them those questions because they are very experienced in this, and most company owners are not experienced in talking to the media. We teach people courses on how to do that. So that would be my other piece of advice on this, is to refer to the SCA on any sort of those questions if they come up. Does that work?
Yeah, thanks, Brita. Thomas or Loy, anything you want to add to the question about how companies should be communicating their ability to operate safely to their clients?
Well, I think Brita made a ton of good points, and thanks for plugging safety there, Brita. Much appreciated. Yeah, I don't know that I can expand a whole lot more on that, other than the messaging that I guess as an industry we got to get out, and these type of things are really helping, is that we do practice health and safety, and construction sites really are some of the safest places that there are actually in. I know we're deemed a high-risk industry, but most construction companies take health and safety quite seriously, and a lot of our members especially do. And again, there's lots of resources, but in terms of the messaging, I think just as a whole and together collaboratively, we got to make sure that we are, especially during this time, letting the public know and everyone else that we do respect safety a lot on the sites, and that is a collaborative industry as well, and that we are interested in keeping employees safe. And there's lots of information on pandemic planning and managing that are available through construction. It's coming through across the country, but we also have a lot on our website that can help too. So yeah, I don't know that I can add in terms of the messaging piece any more than Brita has, but I just want to stress that we are a safe industry, in my opinion.
Thanks, Thomas. So one thing that I'll flag is tomorrow we are co-hosting with SCSA, with the two home builders associations, with Merit Contractors, and with WCB, a 90-minute town hall specifically on the question of on-site safety management in the era of COVID-19. So that's available to everybody operating in the V codes across the province. And so many of you will have seen emails from us or from other associations on that, and you're welcome to participate. We're going to have safety experts from the non-residential sector providing their perspectives on what are the major risks, how do we mitigate those, and what are the best practices out there for managing safety. And Loy is going to be part of that call tomorrow. So, and that will be just on that one topic. We have a few more minutes, a couple of more questions here. If anybody does have any last questions and you want to put in the Q&A, please do that. I think this next question will come to you, Candice. And the question is, are layoff provisions any different if we have employment contracts with our employees?
Yeah, they certainly could be. I guess it'll depend ultimately what's in your employment contracts, whether they address the circumstances of layoffs. In my experience, most of the written employment contracts we've seen don't include layoff provisions, except where we're talking about collective bargaining agreements, in which case that most certainly will impact whether you're able to take advantage of these increased abilities to lay off. So as a general rule, your employment contract can't contain anything that's less than what the Saskatchewan Employment Act already provides for. The interesting thing here, of course, is that the Act and the regulations have been amended several times over the last couple of weeks. So if anybody is looking at employment contracts and whether that impacts their ability to lay off, it's definitely one we'd need to look at on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thanks, Candice. Rodelle or Amanda or anybody else, anything you'd like to add to that? Okay, not hearing anything, so that's good. Candice, actually, we'll stay with you to start the answer to this question too then. So if we think we need to consider alternate schedules to lessen interaction on the job site, what flexibility do we have to change the regular working hours of our employees?
Well, I think this is one where everybody's got to take a step back and try to be practical and reasonable here. We're in some unusual times, and I think that's going to warrant some unusual measures. So again, communicating with your employees, trying to make sure that you're implementing measures that are workable from their side, recognizing childcare obligations, whatever that is. But generally, your schedule should be out as far in advance as possible, at least a week ahead of time. And if there's changes to that, keeping the employees advised of that and up to date. But you do have a certain flexibility as an employer to make those changes.
Rodelle, anything that you'd like to add to that?
Oh, Candice covered it.
Okay. So Kyle, and you touched on this a little bit, I think, with Avail, but as employers, if we don't have a benefit program for our employees, and so they don't have access to, an EFAP program, so an employee family assistance or other direct mental health support through a private benefits provider, what resources are available to them that employers could be connecting their employees to?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, Avail could be a great free resource. It allows people to connect with care professionals in their area. So you're able to identify what are some of the main issues going on, probably going to be experiencing a lot of stress and anxiety at this time, and then recognize it goes through a list of everyone in Saskatoon that specializes in those areas, in the Regina area that specializes in those areas, as well as some professionals that can be accessed remotely too. So that could be a free resource there. I'll also include a link on the chat there just to the the Mental Health Commission of Canada, because they've got a whole list of resources that people can access with, chat lines and professional assistance via phone, because that could be a main option at this time. And then, just if they do have questions, specific concerns, things like that, you can always refer them back to us and we can help them navigate that in any way.
Thank you, Kyle. Anything that anybody wants to add to that? Okay. So last question that I have, we still have time if somebody wants to get a last minute question in through the chat or the Q&A, but the last question that I have will start with Amanda and then go to Rodelle. This came also from Jason Duke from CertPro. what resources are out there to support employers who are already overstressed and overworked? So we talked a little bit about that, but specifically supports in terms of navigating the paperwork and admin around government programs.
Okay, there's a couple that I'm aware of. So from the provincial governments, I know that they have opened up a dedicated business line. And that information, I can provide the link to that, but there is a phone number and an email that is dedicated to just business support and answering questions around what's an allowable business, the programs they're offering, anything to do with layoffs, etc. They're actually answering, and they actually respond fairly quickly, because I did ask one last week for one of our members. From the feds, there isn't much that I've seen. Unlike most of it is going through Service Canada. Now, I'm sure with the amount of EI they're dealing with, they're probably inundated a bit, so getting a response might take a little bit longer. But I would suggest one of the things that you can do, if you do have questions about layoffs or about anything with the financial or business supports available, is make sure that you're looking at what the SCA is providing. We are putting out, usually on a daily basis, information that is in more kind of small pieces to provide you with the important information that you need. And if you need anything else, just reach out to us. We've had a few members that have done that and have asked us some specific questions about how layoffs would apply for certain groups or things like that. And we're happy to go and track those answers down for you. It might take us a little bit, but we have the team of experts available that we can at least kind of bounce a couple things off of.
Perfect. Thanks, Amanda. Rodelle, what would you like to add to that?
I think Amanda covered it well. That's one thing I was aware of too, is just that new business response team. And yeah, as far as the federal government providing support, I think it's pretty tough. When I was kind of doing some research last night, I read that there is 1 million people who have applied for EI. So that in itself is like, good luck getting through to anybody. So it's good to see the government of Saskatchewan has put together a team though to be able to answer specific questions. And I think the SCA has been doing an awesome job, like with these webinars, the e-blasts that you guys have been doing. It's been much easier to like keep that information concise, because there's so much information out there right now and it's changing constantly.
Thank you, Rodelle. So I just noticed that Kyle has posted the information on the Mental Health Commission of Canada in the chat for those who are interested in it. As well, Amanda will, Jennifer's requested that we post the number for the business support line. We'll do that, and it is available. If you just Google business support Saskatchewan, it will come up. It is a great resource. It's something the government literally threw together over a weekend, and anybody who's worked with government, understanding that government can do anything in a weekend and do it efficiently and effectively is crazy, but they actually did. And it's working, and it's a great resource. So I would encourage you to reach out to them either by email, which Amanda has posted, or by phone, which she's also posted. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's town hall. I hope that it has been useful for people. I really appreciate the time of our panelists and our participants. A couple of things I want to note. One, tomorrow there will be the town hall for non-residential construction, specifically on on-site safety management in the era of COVID. Wednesday, there's a town hall for the residential sector on the same topic of on-site safety management. And Thursday, there's a town hall on the business side. And so that'll include our experts from Aon, our Misty from Robertson Stromberg talking about contract law. We'll also have, who am I forgetting all of a sudden? But anyway, it's all, so we got risk, we've got insurance, we have Aon there. We'll have Misty, and there'll be others, and the focus of the conversation will be on the business services side. So any issues that weren't covered today, we'll be covering on Thursday. Thanks everyone for your time. This recording will be available on our website later today for anybody to view. Take care, have a safe and great day, and we'll talk to you all soon.